You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
What's up, champ? That's it. Welcome back to Arsenal Pass, episode 42. I'm Brendan Patrick, and I'm no longer joined by calling champion Hayden Dale. That is the old version. This is national champion Hayden Dale joining us. National champion Hayden Dale, welcome.
Thanks for having me on the show, Brendan. It's good to be back.
Honestly, I'm just such a fan. I'm such a fan, and I'm happy for you to be here. Anyway, we're going to be doing, what you would expect. We're going to be going into Hayden's Nationals journey. Everything before the preparation, the tournament, and what the future is for this majestic man. But first, Hayden, tell me about your week in Flesh and Blood.
Played some Flesh and Blood this week. I think we can talk about it as we get into it. But yeah, of course, the weekend was
just a locals. Or
yeah,
just a locals.
I actually played at an armory last night, which was cool. So post ban, I was really keen to play because we've been testing for nationals so much. I mean, it's just kind of been the only focus. I didn't really think about post ban too much. So I did some tweaks to Reiner. Went along to my locals last night. It was good. I played Olivia Mirror in the last round and got extremely lucky with my opponent bricking on double ones to take a bunch of their blood debt, and then I managed to win. So, it was otherwise, nationals this past weekend. We'll dive into it, but just a really good week, awesome experience, and a great time.
Yeah, for me, obviously, I was spectating New Zealand Australian Nationals. It was really awesome. I'm really happy that we got to do coverage because you probably heard me say it was verbatim that it was a tragedy. So very happy that we were able to watch it. I've been doing some Twitter Spaces recently. This is the Arsenal Pass account. Will tweet out the Twitter Space, and we've been, I've had Tan and Grace, as well as some others come and watch party New Zealand Australian Nationals with me, and then I've done some spoiler episodes with the likes of Tarek Patel, and it's just been great. Like, I really love that platform. We're going to continue doing it. That being said, I do have a shout out for this week. I never do shout outs. That was our rule of Arsenal Pass.
We're doing some today. Don't worry. We're doing some today.
But I'm straight up breaking the rules because I watched a video from the Tall Timmy, and it was the funniest Flesh and Blood video I've ever seen. So he's on a call with Hayden Dale, and oh my God, I was laughing out loud. So go check that out. It was freaking hilarious. I just so good. Oh my God. But Hayden, let's hop into the news.
Yeah, I was
first.
Yeah, I put you first this time for obvious reasons.
Yeah, throw me off. So I got to say congratulations to our new national champion winners in New Zealand's Nick Holding and some other guy in Australia. You can find coverage of both events on YouTube. FAB TCG YouTube has the New Zealand's up now with commentary, and Fluke and Box has the Australian coverage for both days. So check it out. It was an awesome experience, right? I really enjoyed the top eights of both. And it was, New Zealand in particular, like obviously Australia was cool. I'm not trying to play it down, but New Zealand was really cool because there's like a lot of household names that were on stream all the time. So it's like, I feel like we've been talking about a lot of these players for, like a year or so. And so many people have entered the game since then. Now they finally get to see, who's this Cale McCreath I keep hearing about? Who's this Matt Rogers? And you get to see them all duke it out in the New Zealand. So I really enjoyed that. Check out the stream.
Yeah, and a huge congrats to Nick Holding. I actually haven't had the privilege of meeting Nick. I don't think our paths have crossed at the Auckland calling I went to last year, but I've heard a lot about him. I've seen him play. We saw Nick playing on the Blitzathon stream, playing Wizard after he won a PTI, I think, maybe at a Blitz event, or he won the Blitz side event at the Nationals a year earlier, I think.
The Drakai of Ether?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was Nick Holding or Nick Adson.
No, he's a Katsu player, the other Nick. Nick Holding he's the one that James White dubbed the first Drakai of Ether, and now he's donned the Prism, but yeah, just an awesome result for Nick. So great to see him, just continuing to build on his early success and take out New Zealand Nationals in a really cool final as well. So credit to both him and Matt. And yeah, like you say, having the commentary as well for the New Zealand Coverage was fantastic, and just a big shout out to Fluke and Box as well. To John. He was asked, I think, like 2 days before if he could organize coverage because something else fell through or they wanted to do coverage, and he just got it sorted. So, it's cool that Australia got to have coverage because there probably wasn't going to be if it wasn't for him. So, yeah. Otherwise, in the news, farewell events for Welcome to Wraith are on this weekend. I know I'm going to a few. Brendan, are you playing any this weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to one over here at Reaper Game Store with Bill.
Nice.
So, should be fun.
You'll be drafting Yellow
I've been
Bella?
setting up on... honestly, I think that, nobody else really knows about that archetype, so I might be able to get away with it. But, I've been setting up on my Welcome to Wraith drafting videos by Mr. Hayden Dale, and I feel prepared. Good
to hear. Well, yeah, I'm off to a few as well. As Brendan says, if you do want to check out some of those videos, I did load some videos up onto the Arsenal Pass YouTube talking about the draft format for Welcome to Wraith and all the different heroes and the archetypes that you can draft into. So yeah, be sure to check it out if it's something you're interested in. I'm excited to go, and I'm actually doing a Welcome to Wraith draft tonight as well. So there's a store near me that's running a Welcome to Wraith draft, and then heading along to the farewell events this weekend. Spoiler season's in full swing, right? It's been a hectic week already. What are we, 3 days in by the time we record this, and we've had a lot of spoilers already. We've seen generics, we've seen class cards in particular for Brute, Warrior. We saw a 2-cost arrow already. I think we're going to talk about a couple of spoilers further down. But yeah, up on fabtcg.com, there is the full spoiler gallery, and as well as the release schedule for who's releasing what. I think that usually gets updated 2 days before people release, and you can see what's been done so far. So yeah, some really cool cards. And I mean, personally for me, like the first few days, I was like, oh, some of these cards are cool from an art perspective, but the last few days, the art on some of these cards has just been like phenomenal. I feel like every set just steps up. So card gallery, high quality images, you can go look at those.
Excited to get my head around all the items,
So many items.
There's just so many, and it's like items have historically, they've been tough to run in these metas, but it's like with what we expect to be a shift in the meta, right? A shift away from kind of plunder run, hyper aggressive. I wonder if they'll be more playable, or if the power level on these is just so high, or it's in combination with another card we haven't seen yet, that this would be very popular to have a lot of items in your deck.
Yep, we'll have to talk about those soon. Do want to call out our spoiler is going up at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday morning. That's 11 p.m. for my Australian brethren, and 1 a.m. Saturday morning for New Zealand. Hard to pick a time that works. We have a set day, and we have to pick a time there, so that's the time that I've chosen. We recorded the video yesterday, just a short video releasing our spoiler and talking about it. It's a really cool card, so we did also want to talk about it. So that'll go up on the YouTube, and we'll tweet out the little blurb and the card as well, so you can see our reveal when that goes live, in case you don't want to watch the video. Otherwise, I would just want to call out. I said shout outs this week, right? Brendan, you gave a shout out already to the Tall Timmy for his great video. I don't know if you saw this. I think you might have seen it, but there was also an animated video that someone made of the final match, which is the effort in that video is amazing. I'm not sure the person who made it, but they've done a great job. It's on the Facebook page for Flesh and Blood. I might even drop the description, the link down in the description here, so everyone can see it as well. It's such a cool effort someone's gone to make this animated video, Old Time versus Viscerai. But also just wanted to shout out to Flake. I joined Flake on his podcast yesterday. We talked about his spoiler card, which is an item as well, Brendan. A pretty cool item actually as well. That's recursive kind of style. I've forgotten, I think it's called Amulet of Oblation. I can't remember the name of it, but it puts an attack action on the bottom of your deck instead of putting it to the graveyard, which is quite cool at instant speed. And then also I spoke with Taylor and Isaac yesterday on the Attack Action podcast, two very good friends of ours who do a great job. Just wanted to shout out those guys as well. We had a cool discussion, a little bit about Nationals, a little bit about spoilers as well, which was great to do.
Are you doing the post-Nationals victory tour onto everybody's podcast?
I'm just chatting to our friends and to people in our community, and we talk a little bit about Nationals. We talk a bit about spoilers. Me and Flake talked a lot about the banning and restricted announcements from 2 weeks ago, and just kind of the retrospect after Australia and New Zealand Nationals, which was a cool conversation to have. Talking about a lot of things.
Yeah, sure. If you guys want to book Hayden, you can email me at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. We do have a $50 cover fee, and there is an additional $30 for each hour. But hit me up. He is available, and I'm your man. So I would say check out Hayden's deck guide, his Nationals winning deck Viscerai guide. on the Arsenal Pass YouTube channel. That video is absolutely blown up. There's tons of love in the comments, and I think for an appropriate reason. The man did it, and the deck is really cool. It was my favorite deck post Orlando, and I think that Hayden does a great breakdown of showing you kind of how to play that deck and how it functions. Finally, Patreon shout out. Thank you all so much for supporting us on Patreon. We're actually over 400 patrons now, which is funny because we did make the changes to our content, and it's an interesting correlation. But obviously, Hayden did win nationals, so that's awesome. But if you're interested in the Arsenal Pass Patreon, we do have extra content there, including deck guides, extra pods, deep dive videos, and access to our community Discord. So check it out if you want to get in touch with us or support us in any additional way. It means the world to us.
Definitely, yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah, let's talk about we got to talk about some previews, some of the preview season. There's some really cool cards. I just pulled up the preview gallery so far, and there's just a couple of cards that I wouldn't mind discussing. Anything you want to start with, Brendan?
So I'm going to start with Kraken's Aether Vein.
Yeah, because you tweeted about this and you lost your mind. So have you had time to calm down and maybe think that this card is... What do you actually think about this weapon? Let's read it first. What does it do? What does it do?
For sure. So it's a wizard weapon, staff, two-hander. It's at Majestic. And it says, once per turn instant, 3 resources, deal 1 arcane damage to target opposing hero. Draw a card for each arcane damage dealt this way. So Hayden, you mentioned you're a bit underwhelmed. Well, I'll tell you that this is the most broken card ever printed. I mean, this is Dustblade times 10. Honestly, it looks underwhelming right now. I think that we want it looks underwhelming, but I love it. We want a way to buff the damage here, right? To draw multiple cards after paying 3 resources. This is great. This weapon is probably good against, immediately when you look at it, probably good against aggressive decks, like people who are going to not be able to pitch for your arcane or just, extend their entire hand into you, right? So like Wizard traditionally kind of has a problem, or at least it has had a problem too, like in Blitz specifically, which is I think where it's more powerful. We can talk about CC a little bit later as well. But in Blitz, like it was like your opponent could either play smart, right? And they could pitch for, important things like Aether Flare or Aether Spindle, like they would let you opt, or they could just ignore everything and go face. And honestly, the second plan was kind of better. It was crazy. So Wizard just didn't have a lot of ways to punish that, right? They had like Aether Flare. Obviously they had the Stir Fork, they had the Spindle. Like I said, you can get that big opt. But I think that Wizard really needed more ways to punish the opponent for not respecting them. And Kraken's Aether Vein can do that, right? I think that we really want a way to increase its base damage it's doing to the opponent to draw more cards off that resource sink. But ultimately, if you're looking at something like a 4 blue hand or 3 blue hand and you don't really have like the piece you need, you can potentially filter with this, find the Voltic Bolt, and stir and play it on their turn. It just helps fix some hands. Honestly, right now, without additional support, I think we might be running the Crucible for a while.
That's what it kind of seems to me as it's a way to fix hands into. You run a lot of blues in Kano, right? And often you have 4 blues in hand, and it's like default is to flip a card, right? I just flip Kano because I have 4 blues. Whereas with this, you have this now outlet to pitch, deal the damage, cycle that blue card, and deal the damage while you cycle it, and potentially find the red line card or the yellow line card that's going to help you deal some damage on that turn. So yeah, really, really strong. You also force the opponent to say, well, do you want to trade 1 card for my 1 card? Because you want to pitch to Arcane Barrier, and then the upside for the opponent is that you're probably going to play something afterwards and they can take advantage of that. But you can also do it at instant speed, right? It is an instant speed activation, right? It is.
Yeah, it's an instant speed activation.
So you can do it on their turn. Maybe they have 1 card left to Arsenal, or they have no floating resources. You can do it on their turn and potentially turn one of your blues on their turn into something else, and then you have a lot of information to set yourself up for defending, and then what you might do on your turn. So yeah, the card is better than I think I thought it was when I read it, and then I immediately went and checked, nodes, because I thought nodes was actually source. I thought nodes would have worked on this, but nothing currently buffs this. They've been very specific with the templating, but I do still think the card is good, and I'm interested to see how it gets used.
Yeah, hopefully it's not another Aether conduit.
No, exactly. I want to talk about 100 Wins. So 100 Wins is a ninja attack action. We're looking at the red line card here. It's at rare, so there's a cycle of these. Cost 0, has 3 attack and 2 defense, and says combo. If 100 wins was the last attack this combat chain, this attack gains +1 for each other card named 100 wins you control in the combat chain. It has go again. So if you've played 100 wins and then you play another 100 wins, the next one's going to have 4, the next one would have +2. You can be playing yellow or blue lines, but this is the first combo card we've seen that has natural go again on it, which is really interesting. And I think this is quite a powerful card, and kind of a card that aggressive ninja decks have been looking for, is something that combos off of itself and is just naturally does a head jab roll, if nothing else. So I think this card is an upgrade on the aggressive ninja decks, and I think has potentially got a lot of play. Works with like belittle and stuff like this, and stubby hammerers, and there's a lot of like interesting play space with 100 wins, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with like the other cards that this can be used with. There's obviously they spoiled the Winds of Eternity, the one that's going to let you kind of re-put these into your deck, or the ones you use on the combat chain, which looks interesting. I'm happy to get a aggressive line combo, right? Because we kind of had a defensive one out of Crucible of War. And like you said, the only combo card with Go Again inherently on it. What do you think about the block value of 2 this card?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to balance this out for aggressive decks. I think if this defended for 3, it would be very, very, very good and has a lot of utility. Winds of Eternity, which is the Majestic, which is the card that combos off of 100 wins, which says combo if 100 wins is the last card on the combat chain. Winds of Eternity gets +2 and shuffle as many cards named 100 wins from your graveyard, combat chain into your deck. So you get to pull those back, and that's quite a cool interaction. It has base 2, so it comes in for 4, and it's a blue, defense for 3. So I think it makes sense, right? It has natural go again, so it's really powerful, 100 wins. So I think that kind of 2 defense value makes sense, and it fits more into aggressive style ninja decks.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything you want to go to? I have 2 more that I want to talk about. Any ones particularly you want to?
So I'm going to quickly go over it because I don't want to spend too much time on spoilers. This will be my last one. It's going to be the Vexing Cool Hand. So we see a Runeblade equipment arms at Majestic. This is going to read action, destroy Vexing Quill Hand, create 2 Rune Chant tokens, go again, and it has Arcane Barrier on it. So in a lot of matchups, I think that in most matchups, this will be a strict upgrade to Arcane Null Rune. So Arcane Barrier 1 on the Null Rune. That being said, if you do use this and activate it, you are going to lose that Arcane Barrier, just like the dash boots. No, it's very, very good, especially like creating 2 Rune Chants with Go Again on demand, not having to pay resources for it. That's very, very good in aggressive and tempo style decks, I believe.
Yeah, I think this card has a lot of utility. It's something different as well, I think, than what we've seen, which is cool. I'm excited to play with it and put it into a Viscerai aggro deck or maybe a chain deck. Quickly talk about 2 more cards. There's a couple of cards I could talk about like ad nauseum. You could talk about Bravo till for a whole episode probably.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'll leave that one. But Deja Vu Potion I think is a really cool card. So I just had it and I just lost it. So yeah, Deja Vu Potion is it's called Potion of Deja Vu. It says it's a 0 cost at blue at rare, no defensive value. It's a generic action item. Instant, destroy Potion of Deja Vu. Put all cards from your pitch zone on top of your deck in any order. And it says in brackets, opponents don't get to see the order of the cards, which is quite cool as well. So a real Kano card here, I think, in terms of being able to pitch some of your red or yellow cards that maybe you could even do something as simple as pitch your yellow or your red Voltic Bolt to your staff. You pop Potion of Deja Vu, you put the Voltic Bolt on top, and then you Sonic Boom for 4 or something, and you guarantee that you hit the Voltic Bolt on top. So that's just a simple thing. You could have a really big turn, a big setup turn where you're doing multiple tomes or something, and end up with like 5 or 6 cards in your pitch, and then you order those in any way you want for a really good Kano or for a really good hand to draw next turn. So I think this card is just surely in some way, shape, or form slots into Kano and does a really cool job.
I honestly think it's incredible.
Yeah, I think this card potentially has a really, really high ceiling. I just don't know how high.
Yeah, for sure. I would imagine this would go into my Kano deck immediately, especially in Blitz. That being said, man, 4 potions in that deck would be maybe tough. Who knows? It's so powerful, right? Like if you are able to get 4, because sometimes you do pitch 4 cards, like you do get up to that with, like Hayden said, if you're toming and stuff like that.
Mm.
And you're able to fix that 5th card. So good.
Yep. And then last one I just wanted to, I think is really interesting, is Pulverize, which is the new Guardian, the biggest attack action we've seen so far. Comes in for 14, costs 10, and has Heave as a new mechanic. So it has Heave 3. At the beginning of your end phase, if Pulverize is in your hand and you have an empty arsenal zone, you may pay 3 and put Pulverize face up into your arsenal. If you do, create 3 Seismic Surge tokens. So you're effectively committing your arsenal slot and putting 3 resources over into a next turn. This is exactly the sort of card I was looking for. I've been talking about these kind of like more setup-based Guardian decks with the auras, and this is the kind of card that I was looking for to pay that off. Because Pulverize, not only does it attack for 14, it also says when Pulverize hits a hero, hits, not crush, hits a hero, their first attack during the next turn has -4. So, with something like Emerging Dominance into this, so to give it Dominate, and maybe the new Bravo, that's a really cool thing you can be doing. And you're effectively, with that, you'd be putting on a 21-point life swing because you give their attack -4, you come in for 17 Dominate. So yeah, excited to see what this card might do and what Guardian kind of has moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm really caught up on Potion of Deja Vu. I was unable to find it in my spoiler things. Can you reread that to me real quick?
Oh, of course, you can't find it. So it's a blue generic action item, doesn't defend, cost 0. Instant, destroy Potion of Deja Vu. Put all cards from your pitch zone on top of your deck in any order.
This is so good, man. This is so good. What the heck? So not even doing what I said, where you're kind of stacking the next card on your deck. You do this like literally during your turn, and then put the Voltic on top after you play the Aether Spin, volcano it off, and play that again. Like this is nuts, and this is great for like something like Aether Flare. Oh my god! Oh, this is going
Blazing.
right back. This is so. Yeah, it's it's so good. Oh my goodness. Okay, sweet. I'm down. Let's go.
Let's do it. Yeah, no, it's cool. All right. Well, I think that's some spoiler. We want to talk more about spoilers. We could talk, I think, as I say, for a length of time about spoilers. I'm sure Brendan might be doing another Twitter Spaces in the next week to talk about spoilers. I'll definitely try and jump on with you and talk previews. I keep saying spoilers. It's a preview season, really, isn't it? And discuss them. But if not, I think we're going to probably, we haven't discussed this, but I think next week we're probably going to talk about the set in its entirety and the impacts on Classic Constructed and what cards we think are going to have the most impact. I'm guessing we're going to do that. We haven't actually decided, but I'm going to say it's probably what we're going to do next week.
All right, just book me in.
I'm booking you
onto the main topic of the pod, which is the champion, Mr. Hayden Dale. We're going to take a deep dive here. So Hayden, tell me about the changes you made to your testing team, time schedule, and overall methods prior to this year / this tournament, because it's different, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna talk about nationals and I guess you want to start with some preparation and change of time. Yeah. So I guess for me the kind of thing that changed was just it's so difficult being in different time zones, and especially now we're experiencing daylight savings. So for us to do testing with like Southern Hemisphere and Northern Hemisphere is really, really difficult. So just for like my own health and being able to sleep and do the things that I need to on a daily basis, I have ended up not testing with most of the North American team this basically since I got back from Orlando, really end of last year. So my main testing has been done with Damakai, who's in New Zealand, who's part of our testing group, and also just competed at New Zealand Nationals over the weekend. And then we've kind of done a bit of like out of sync testing. So me and Dan would often be testing together. He's who I've tested the most with. But then we're in discussions all the time in like our Discord group with the testing group about, hey, like this is what we're finding in our testing. We're documenting our notes. This is like the matchups we've been testing. Hey, can anyone test this matchup? And then, the North American guys jump on for their day to start, and they'll get in their morning testing and carry on from where we were in test matchups. And so that's kind of what it's looked like. And it's just been, it sucks to not, to have the interaction, but honestly, for like just actually making it work, it's been so much better and been a good change.
Yeah. So you switched over to testing with mostly just Dan Mackay. You had sort of this asynchronous schedule with the US players as well. I just want to go into, just kind of expand on that a little bit, right? Because before this year, your testing schedule was very erratic, right? You didn't have a set group, and you weren't really doing it that much. But I'm just gonna go ahead and call this out because I remember when this started, right? You made a cognizant choice to get more serious about it, right? So you started doing it every single day, maintaining like data integrity and focusing on, trying to achieve something in every session. I think that was huge, right? Like I mean, obviously, like you said, your time schedule was funky. You were staying up late, waking up early. And like, I genuinely think that you were able to become champion because like you really put in the work this time, right? Like the first time around and the calling that was skill, right? That was just raw skill, maybe a little bit of luck. This time, I think it was hard work plus luck, and skill was probably the least relevant factor. And I'm just really proud, right? Because I remember when you talked to me about starting that whole process and then watching you go through it, maintain it, work hard, and then ultimately achieve what we could probably consider to be like the final goal of 2021, even though it happened in 2022. Like, I think that's awesome, right?
Yeah, it was a good experience. Like it was something that definitely post or even pre Orlando, like for the wider testing team, like yourself and Dante, it was like every day was testing, right? Like leading up to nationals and that calling, and then post the calling, I still committed to that because obviously I had my nationals. So yeah, it's been a good few months of testing basically every day with our schedule, or with my schedule, my new schedule, and like you say, yeah, recording results, having discourse about the decks we're testing and how we want to attack the meta, and more theoretical sort of conversations and discussion. And yeah, it's been an experience anyway. It's been a journey for sure, and at times it's been tough and it's not been easy. But I do think like preparation, like if someone said like what was the one thing that kind of helped you to win nationals this past weekend, like it's definitely preparation. Like I just felt so prepared for this event, which was a great place to be in.
Mm-hmm. So what was your process to find the deck that you eventually played at nationals?
Yeah, I don't know if it was like a set process. I think Orlando really influenced it. So we had like a really good idea of the meta after Orlando. There was a couple more weeks of nationals in that kind of grouping after that, where the meta didn't really change too much. A lot of Briar. We saw Old Time start to rise to the surface a bit just due to its strength against Briar. We saw Chains, and we started to see more Lexies. So I think we had like a really good idea of what the format was doing post Orlando and post that kind of November group of nationals. And then so we kind of had December and January to work out what we were going to play, me and Dan, that is, for our nationals in Australia and New Zealand respectively, and decide what the list was going to look like, the game plan, the matchup plans, things like that. So that's kind of where that started. So initially, kind of like the few weeks after Orlando was like throwing decks at the wall. Okay, like how do we beat Briar is like the number one. If we can't beat Briar, I don't think we want to play the deck, because even if people find decks to beat Briar, people are still going to play Briar. Like it's just really powerful. And then it was like, okay, like Channel Mount Heroic now becomes like the more prevalent version because people think it has a better game against Old Time. So we're testing things there where, for me, I was really keen to, like, I wanted to play Viscera. I had the deck with me in Orlando. I just didn't feel like I had quite the right game plans against the Guardians and didn't play it. Ended up playing Briar, but knew that I did, if I could, I would still want to play Viscera if I could. And seeing Matt Rogers top 8 the event with a more like sort of combo focused version, I think gave us somewhere to start from as well, to sort of come from that sort of endpoint and then maybe from where I was with a more tempo-based version and find something maybe in between or more similar to Matt's or whatever it might be. But that's kind of where I know Dan really started. He was really keen on the deck, so he played Viscera a lot more than me initially, whereas I was testing out more things, playing a lot of Chain, trying to get that to work. Didn't think it was consistent enough, so kind of left that after a few weeks. Old Time wasn't really my style, so didn't even really touch that, to be honest. Didn't feel like I wanted to play it. We tried to tweak Briar. We played a bit more Channel Mount Heroic sort of Briar decks, and we tried to play some more, I guess, lightning builds that maybe could beat Old Time or have a better matchup against Old Time. And then eventually, sort of probably around Christmas time, after we'd done a lot of testing, we were really starting to lean heavily towards, like, we thought Viscera was the right option. It gave us the best matchup spread. We thought we had the best opportunity to tweak the matchup plans to be really confident across the board and have a deck that was really, although it wasn't 100% consistent, was more consistent than decks like Chain or Mount Heroic Briar, but also had really good matchups into things like Old Time. So yeah, around that time we kind of lock it in, and then the last sort of like 3 to 4 weeks is just like tuning the last few slots in the deck, maybe the last 6 or 7 cards in the list, and just planning the matchups, learning the matchups, coming up with plans to beat Chain, which we thought was like not a great matchup. We came up with a plan for that, and just getting reps and just learning the matchup so that on the day hitting into nationals, it's kind of second nature when you head into these matchups. You just play it like a testing game. Ideally.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you what other decks were you kind of in between, but it sounds like it was Chain and Briar. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think early on for me it was Chain. Felt like I had a list that I liked, but just didn't feel quite consistent enough. And then Briar was kind of the backup option, I think, up until about around sort of New Year's time. And then it was for me, well, I'm playing Viserai. I'm happy to lock it in, and I'm going to lock it in.
Yeah. Throughout this kind of like rigorous schedule, you're doing like the daily stuff. Did you ever consider kind of stopping, like just quitting? Just be like, it's not worth it, right? Or was it just smooth sailing the whole time?
No, definitely not. 100%. There was days where I was like, I'm just like, I felt like I was hitting brick walls with the testing, where a deck we thought had a good matchup, and then we retweaked some things and the matchup felt terrible, or we started playing, we got someone else to play it who had a better idea of how to play the matchup, and it just wasn't what we expected. There was definitely that, and times where I was like, what's the point? I'll just play what I think is the best deck and just do away with most of the testing and just get a few more games in and just do it that way. But I think just Dan was big credit to Dan. Like Dan was like committed. Like every night he was on at his time, and it's quite late for him, and he was always committed to it. And I think that kept me committed to trying to find the best sort of outcome for us and find the deck that we could tune and play. And just honestly, like I was enjoying most of it. It was just at times it kind of sucked and was like, I feel like we haven't found something that breaks the format. We haven't found something that has amazing matchups across the board. But in reality, that's not actually going to happen. We're not in a chain meta anymore. So yeah, there was definitely times of like, should we drop this? But no, it was overall, I think, pretty good. There's just a few days where it was kind of frustrating.
Some of the progressive feedback I was getting throughout that testing process was hilarious, right? We would, like you said, we would find a deck that we thought had a really good matchup, and then like a week later be like, yeah, it's actually favored for the other player or for the other deck. And like it constantly was like this cyclical thing where you're trying to find the deck to play, and it's just swapping between things. And it was like, damn, I just don't know what it is. And it's like every other week there'd be like the new deck that was like the deck, and it was just so much better than everything else, and it would kind of get put back in its place. But yeah, Viserai, I'm happy that you ended up on Viserai. That deck I felt like a super solid, and we'll dive into a little bit more like what the problems were with that deck and what strengths are as well. The last question I have for you regarding preparation is that if you could just change anything about that preparation period for the tournament, what would it be? Like, what did you do wrong, or what was maybe not optimal?
I think maybe trusted our guts a bit more. We had this gut feeling that we thought Viserai was probably just the best deck, but I was determined that after playing a few games, I didn't think it was that consistent. So rather than focus on maybe how we could make that better and more consistent and come up with more consistent game plans, I started to think about other decks, and I think I wasted my time on a few things. So probably just that, to be honest, just follow gut feelings a little bit more. I wish I was locked in, or at least committed to testing the hero a bit sooner, I think. But I think luckily kind of got bailed out by the fact that I'd played a ton of Viserai previously, and also at the start of the Tales of Aria format, so I had a good idea of where I wanted to take the kind of game plans and stuff.
For sure. All right, let's hop into the deck here. So what's your favorite part about Viserai, and what opportunities does that deck provide to its pilot that other decks don't?
First of all, it's just super fun to play. It's really challenging. I think there's a lot of lines with this deck, a lot of different turn to turn. The micro decisions, there's so many of them, just because of the fact that you have this combo oriented game plan, but you also have a really strong sort of tempo and proactive game plan as well that you can be following. So trying to decide which plan you play and why you play it, and it can hinge on the cards you draw. It can hinge on what your opponent does, as well as how you've sideboarded and set up the deck. So that's one of the things about the deck. That's actually, I find that really fun, and that's really challenging. But also that also affords you this whole thing of, well, you have so many different ways to attack the format. You have so many different ways to interact with your opponent, and to, okay, my opponent has really, they're really aggressive, and they shut down my ability to trade damage with them. But actually, I have this ability to set up this semi-OTK combo that I can deal them a big chunk of damage with, take the tempo all in one big swing, and then finish the game out from there. Or actually, the combo is just so terrible into this prison matchup, for instance, and I need to be really aggressive. But thankfully, like I have the right cards available to me, and I have the ability to do that with the deck. So yeah, I think the flexibility is probably the biggest thing that you get out of playing Viserai, especially in the similar list to maybe what we're playing in the current meta.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really love how it's able to kind of dynamically adapt to the to the hero that it's facing up against. And as the Viserai player, I feel like you have an essence of control in a lot of those games, not just the combo ones, but even the tempo ones. So yeah, that deck gives, I would say, if I could sum it up, that deck gives its pilot a lot of agency. So
Also gives you a lot of opportunities to lose the game, to be honest, to misplay
yeah,
and to to put yourself out of the game. But you know what? That's cool. I think it's one of the coolest parts about Flesh and Blood, and I want to play those kinds of decks.
So, I mean, like you said, you kind of front run me on this next one, but what do you think is the deck's biggest weakness?
So you could say the lines of play and how complicated that can be, but actually the biggest weakness might be that it just can lose to itself. It has consistency issues to a degree, especially the heavier you lean into that combo plan, the more consistency issues you can have. That's why I think trying to just straight up combo people with a full OTK is actually, it's not great. It can be really dangerous and can result in you just kind of losing the game to the deck itself. So yeah, it's probably between the complicated nature of the lines and how you should play games and how easy a mistake can kind of derail you, and just this idea that the more inherent this inherent thing that the more you move towards that combo game plan, the more you can find yourself just losing to your draws and to maybe the opponent hitting the CNC on the wrong turn or whatever it is.
Yeah. So what were you trying to accomplish when you picked Viserai? What was your meta call, and what decks were you trying to prey upon?
Question. So I think post Orlando, right? We knew about Briar was like the top deck. We knew people were going to be trying to beat it as well. So we knew there was going to be Ultim. And that was like the two main things. Was like, okay, like how do we what deck has a good matchup into Briar and also into Ultim? And to be honest, the only deck that felt like that for me and for Dan as well was Viserai. Everything else we tried, we felt didn't have. So we really liked Lightning Briar, but we felt that we couldn't get a list that made us more than maybe like 40% against Old Time. So that felt like it was kind of out the window for us. We felt like if we were going to win a Nationals, we'd have to beat an Old Time, probably in the top 8, to be able to win a Nationals in this meta. And same with a Briar. We'd probably need to beat a Briar, whether it be Mount Heroic or Lightning. And, actually one thing that was quite funny is I thought like Chain had a good matchup into Briar, but after playing and learning their matchup, we were just smashing the Chain decks with Lightning Briar, like just left, right, and center. It actually just felt ridiculous once we learned the matchup a lot more. It felt like Chain had to get really lucky to win that matchup. So that kind of just was like, okay, well, here's Viserai. And then we just thought about how to, I guess, hit those game plans against the 3 decks that we were worried about, which was Lightning Briar, Channel Mount Heroic Briar, Old Time, and then Lexi was kind of the next one sat in there, and it was like, let's focus on these 4 kind of pillars, and Chain as well, sorry. Let's focus on these four heroes, 5 sort of decks, and just like tweak matchups to be as consistent as possible was the main thing, just because of the deck's inherent issues it can have, and also just the power level that or the plan we need to be on to make sure that we win this matchup as much as possible, as often as possible.
Yeah, I think that there's actually a third part to that equation, which Viserai satisfies pretty well, which is like you want to be good against what you see as the top decks. You want to be good against Briar. You want to be good against the deck that's good against Briar, or the one that people are going to pick to try to counter it. And then you want to be average versus everything else. You don't want to have any like auto losses and stuff like this, because at the end of the day, even though it's a national championship, there's still kind of a lot of decks in there, right? Like it's not super, super predictable. Like, I mean, specifically in like the United States Nationals, we saw tons of people like not play a single Briar throughout that entire tournament, when that tournament was statistically very saturated with Briar. So I think you need a deck that's like prepared for everything, at least on like an average stance.
Yeah, you need plans for every matchup, and I think, interestingly, in my perspective, in Nationals you can hedge a bit more against the top decks because you have draft, and if you feel really confident about the draft format, then maybe you are okay to have an X1 record and Constructed, or maybe even an X2 record if you're really confident that the top players are going to play certain decks, and you feel confident that you can probably accurately predict 7 of the 8 sort of decks that would make, and then maybe there's one wild card that hits in there, which is actually what happened with ours in the end. It was All Time, Briar, me on Viserai, and then there was a Katsu that snuck in there. So I think you can have a little bit more leeway with the decisions you make when it's not a single format, when you have that dual format aspect. But yeah, I think in the end, like for instance, we played Nelrun. We didn't want to punt our match to Kano. Probably the one matchup we were like, and I know this is your next question. I've just read on the run sheet, but the matchup I was worried about heading into the most was Prism. We just tested that matchup and it felt abysmal. It felt like as long as if the Prism had played the matchup before and didn't get unlucky and we didn't get quite lucky, it just was almost impossible to win that matchup. I actually ran into it in round 2 and I did draw quite well, and my opponent had like less of a great draw and I was able to win the game. But yeah, it's a really tight matchup, even if you draw well and they don't, and didn't want to run into it. It was the one matchup where I feel like we didn't have enough spots to shore up. We couldn't come up with a good enough plan that we felt we could win that game consistently.
Yeah, so I do have something to admit, and here at Arsenal Pass, we've we haven't said too many good things about Prism. We've you might even accuse us of not talking about it enough, and you know what? That's out of the bag. Hayden and I have secretly been saying that Prism is absolutely busted and obviously the best deck, and I'm really surprised there's been no bannings, but we've been trying to keep it very PR with you guys and, direct you towards these lesser powerful decks like Chain and Briar, but secret's out. Prism's the best deck. All right, let's talk about the tournament. So how'd you feel on the day up?
Hold on. As much as you want to take the satirical take, Prism was a fantastic choice for Nationals this weekend. Regardless of what you think of the deck, and I know your whole thing is more that you don't like the playstyle of the Light Illusionist and Prism in particular, and there's people in that boat. But in reality, Prism was a fantastic shout, and huge props to Nick in New Zealand for picking up that deck and taking it. And there was a few players in New Zealand on that deck. There was a few players in Australia, and it was a deck that beats the deck that's trying to beat the deck, right? It's the third level in that kind of stage. People are targeting Briar. This targets the deck that targets Briar in terms of, it's really good against Oldtime and Viscerai. So I think you have to have some fortitude to take that deck and make that decision. And it can be a little bit risky because you could just run into a bunch of Briars, and that's going to be very tough for you because that matchup is abysmal. But if you feel really confident in your draft, for instance, why can't I maybe 5-1, 6-0 my draft? Maybe I 4-2, drop 2 games to Briar, I'm in top 8. And all of a sudden, there's all these Guardians and stuff for me to prey on in top 8 who have been preying on the Briars. So the satirical take, sure, but I also think big props to people who took Prism. I think it was actually a great metagame call.
Yeah, so I was mainly just trying to make fun of us for being wrong.
I know.
Not mentioning the deck that has probably had the most success in the professional circuit. Like it's been like almost unequivocally Prism to an extent. Like it's had champions, it's won events in both metas, and in both metas, like I think that both of us were like, we don't really like that deck, right? It's just funny. Because like statistically, we're just straight up wrong at this point. So let's go ahead and talk about the tournament. So how did you feel on the day of and going into the tournament?
Our Nationals got pushed back so much. We had our Nationals cancelled in 2020. Nationals got pushed back from November last year to January this year. To be honest, just walking into the hall, I was like, I actually cannot believe this is happening, that we're finally getting Nationals, was kind of my first feeling on the day. And then I was just excited to play. I actually didn't feel nervous or anything. I just wanted to play Flesh and Blood and play some great games. And I was just excited to, I think coming off the back of Orlando, very fortunate having been able to go to Orlando and play a calling. And as soon as I got home from the calling, I was like, cannot wait for the next like high level event to play more competitive Flesh and Blood. And that time was this weekend. So yeah, I was just amped for it.
So roughly, what was the Classic Constructed meta breakdown? And what were your thoughts on that? Did anything surprise you?
Yeah, I don't know if I saw a day 1. There's a day 2 up on FAB TCG, and Briar was I think it was about a third of the decks on day 2. But day 1, I think it was I think Briar was about 30% of the field on day 1 in Constructed, which was about probably what we expected. Maybe people expected a little bit more Briar, to be honest, than that. That was majority Channel Mount Heroic. I think maybe 8 out of 10, or every 8 out of 10 Briars, you would expect to see Channel Mount Heroics in them. So a lot of Channel Mount Heroic builds. I think the second most played I think it might have been Lexi, actually. There was a lot of Lexis around the event, especially on day one. There was a lot of chain, so there was quite a few chain players. Guardian definitely showed up. Quite a bit of Bravo, actually, but also old time. Definitely sitting around there. And then I think after that, you really started to drop down. There was probably only one or two of some decks. I think there was 3 Viserai, I think. I think there was a Rhinar in there. There was a Kano player who made day 2. There was a real sort of mix. Prism, there was definitely 1 or 2 Prism. So you started to get a mix after that. But the predominant of the meta was, Runeblades and Guardians, which is what we expected, and then Lexi as well. So I think it kind of conformed to probably what we thought. If, albeit maybe some of the Briar players, or we thought might be Briars, was maybe a bit more chain, and maybe even a few more like Bravo.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, story time. Take me through Swiss.
Yeah, cool. Definitely, and I'm gonna give some shout outs to some people along the way. The first thing I want to say while we're talking about the event is the event was just it was so well run. So the event was done by RC Crew Games, which is actually my local store. They ran the event and just did a phenomenal job of running the event. Of running the event this weekend. I got to meet a lot of people that I haven't met before or spoken to maybe online or played in previous events here in Australia, and finally getting to see them again. So just the whole weekend was just like a fantastic experience, and just wanted to give a big call out to just the wider team in Sydney as well. All of the guys and my friends that play at locals here in Sydney, Australia as well. Just a big shout out to all of them as well. And then some did really well, like Roy making the finals. So yeah, talk about the event itself. Heading into Swiss, I actually played against a Bravo. So it goes 3 rounds constructed, then you do a draft, 3 rounds of draft, and then it's 3 rounds of constructed, and that's day 1. So you got 9 rounds on day 1. So this was 9 a.m. till I think like 7 p.m. we went to, or something like that. It was, if not later. It was such a big day. It was nearly a 12-hour day. And then the second day you come back for another draft, and then it's 3 rounds of draft and then cut to top 8. So 3 rounds constructed. First round I get paired up against Bravo, playing against Laura, who she's from Melbourne. So, another city here in Australia. I've actually played, last time we played at a final of a skirmish here in Australia, I think like 6-7 months ago, early last year. So, I know she's a good player. We haven't played in a while. And this is one of the hardest matchups I had all weekend, to be honest. I thought I was going to lose this game. I was so far behind. I think I was on like 16 life or something with like 8 rune chance, and Laura was up on like 47 life or something. Like, I thought I was just kind of done and dusted. Managed to like pull it back using some equipment and bring it back and do a sort of combo turn and get back into the game, which was really cool. So yeah, played against Bravo, went for like a semi OTK strategy, was a bit ropey, but ended up getting the win. Played against Prism in round 2, so already getting like the dreaded matchup round 2 that I'm like not wanting to see. And already in round 2, play like a tempo plan into this, as I said earlier, get but fortunate on my draws. I think on turn, I go first, turn 1, make some rune chance. Turn 2, I think I come in for 23 damage on like a Morphin Skies Spellblade Mordred turn, which works out really well for me. So get the win there. The last round of constructed, I play into like a friend of mine, David, who's playing Lexi. He's playing Ice Lexi. I was very fortunate that during my testing, Isaac Jessen from the Attack Action podcast actually helped me with some Lexi testing. So got to play into top 8 US Nationals competitor Isaac to help me prep a little bit. And so I knew the matchup pretty well, and fortunately sort of did a pretty big combo turn and then kind of took the game from there. And then we head into draft, which I'm feeling good about. So I'm feeling happy that I'm 3-0 at this point. Kind of got the round 2, was a little bit nervous after playing that Prism, but kind of got some of the nerves out of the way. Feeling good about draft. Have done, I think at this point in testing, I think I got through like nearly around 20 drafts. Feel pretty confident about what I want to do in draft. My kind of, I don't know if you want to know, Brendan, my thought process going in is Earth is probably going to be overdrafted. Guardian and Briar are probably going to be about right, or they'll be the 3 heroes probably. Generally, my expectation is probably going to see 3 Ultim, 3 Briar, and 2 Lexi in most pots. So I'm sitting there thinking, probably want to be in Lightning Lexi. It's a deck I've drafted quite a bit. It's one of my favorite decks in this format. I don't think it's necessarily the most powerful, but I think you get really rewarded for people underdrafting certain cards like Invigorate, like people valuing that card low. Just Lightning often being underdrafted and Lexi maybe being underdrafted. I hedge some like Earth. I think I get like first pick like an Earthlaw Surge or something. Take a couple of Earth cards. I think I take a Red Frazzle like pretty early. I take some Lightning cards, and then I get past I think a 6th or 7th pick Turn Timber. And I'm like, okay, well, like it looks like I'm being passed Earth Bravo here, and I take that, and then I kind of commit to it when I probably should have tried to keep myself a little bit open. I end up in this kind of Ice with a bit of Earth Bravo deck because Ice ends up being a lot more open on the wheel and into pack 2. But Lightning ended up going around really late. Lightning Elixir was like super open at the table, and so funny enough, the deck that I probably wanted to play was there and don't end up in this old time deck instead.
Really interesting. I actually I do agree with you. I think that Lexi is like very underdrafted, but I actually think that Frost is usually underdrafted, mostly because at least when I played, it might have changed since, right? Briar was so heavily overdrafted that Lightning would get drafted as well as a result, right? And even when we switched into Oldhim, like those Oldhims are generally like heavily prioritizing Earth picks, as well as class cards. So agree with you on the Lexi, but I would have thought, back that Ice would have been the least drafted.
I think Oldheim's popularity's risen a lot, and the people are starting to realize just how good the blue Ice cards are. The rest might be a bit so. My other problem with and Ice did end up being open, and that's why I end up being in this Oldheim deck, to be honest. My problem with Ice and Lexi is that I just don't think a lot of the cards are very good. So I think like Weave Ice and Ice Quake are fantastic cards, but they're rare. And the commons, the common attacks, like I like the other rare, the Frostfang. That card's great, but like the other ones, like Icy Encounter and I've even Winter's Grasp. Like I'm not big fans of those cards. Chill to the Bone. I like in Lexi to have like 1, maybe 2 of those. I actually prefer to have it in just like a Lightning Lexi though, and just play it into the Mirror or into Briar. So yeah. Anyway, I had a lot of thoughts about the format, and what ends up basically happening is I think I just lose a little bit of my fundamentals when I sit down for that first draft, and probably just make some mistakes in some of my picks and end up with what I would probably, if I was grading the deck out of a 10, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10. It was a solid deck. It was good. I felt like I could 2-1 the pod with it. I do end up 2-1ing the pod with it. But yeah, it wasn't the best deck I've drafted, that's for sure.
Yeah. Been there.
So first draft's done, end up at 5-1, and then we go into 3 more rounds of constructed. At this point, it's like, I don't know, it's like almost dinner time. So I'm starting to really feel it. My first round of constructed, I play. Oh, what do I play in the first round of constructed? Luckily, I wrote down my pairings, so I could easily look at what I end up playing against. So in round 6, I end up playing against a Mount Heroic Briar, played by Matt Clark, who's I think a very good player in Australia. I think one of Australia's best, to be honest. I end up losing to Matt twice over the course of the weekend. I end up losing to him in my second draft as well. He's 2 of my 4 losses. Playing a Mount Heroic. It's such a weird game. I end up like losing the game with 24 rune chance or 21 rune chance or something in play. But I just couldn't find the Sonata to combo off and then sort of take the game away after Matt has like a really slow start. I just can't sort of capitalize and take advantage. And then eventually he finds a Mount Heroic turn. I think he comes in after playing the Mount Heroic, he comes in for like 31 damage the next turn. And just kind of finishes me off. And that's the turn I find the Sonata, but it's kind of too late. So lose that. Feeling a little bit nervous at this point, being, what am I at this point? 4-2, right? I think then. So feeling a little bit dicey. Play into another Mount Heroic Briar next round. Goes a bit better for me. Play a bit more of like a semi-OTK plan. And then finish out the day. I play into Old Time, which I think is like a good matchup for me, but I am up against Nick Butcher, who, if people are familiar, Nick is Matt Rogers' testing partner, and I know they'll have a very good tuned deck and probably have a plan for this matchup, obviously knowing the Viserai deck so well, and how much they worked on it. Ends up going my way, going pretty well for me. I do a full combo in that plan, which is kind of the plan that we had anyway, kind of goes to script. I managed to finish the day at 7-2 after 9 rounds, and then I need to come back for draft on day 2 and get 1 win, which will lock me for top 8. So feeling all right as I head home, albeit very, very tired after day 1, Brennan.
So give me like the 10-20 second breakdown of that second draft on day 2.
Yeah. It goes horribly, basically. I basically do the same thing I did on day one. I make the same mistake of I keep myself kind of open, but I think that the signal I'm reading is that Earth is open. Not true. I think there ends up being like 1.5 Lightning Drafters at the table. There's 1 Lexi player, 2 Old Time, and 5 Briar, and you guessed it, I'm one of the 5 Briars. So end up on just having 3 cards left in pack 3. I need 1 card, otherwise I'm playing a Crack Bauble. And luckily, I think a blue Entwine Ice comes around, which I can stick in my deck, and I don't have to play a Crack Bauble. So my deck's pretty poor. But I do manage to win round 1 against another Briar. The good thing is, if my Briar deck's bad, then probably the 4 other Briars probably don't have great decks either. And that's kind of how it turns out. I win my first round against another Briar. Do lose my second 2. But yeah, and Matt punishes me with the Terra Sunder that I passed him as well in the second round to beat me twice in the Nationals. But yeah, I end up at 8-4, which is locks me because of my resistance, because of winning my early rounds, my losses being later, and being 6th seed heading into top 8.
8-4. So you came in at like 6th, right?
Yep, 6th seed. Yep.
All right. Well, take me through the top 8. Take me through the gauntlet. How did you win?
So I actually think I end up my last round of draft. I have the win, and instead of defending with 2 cards, I only need I have Arcanic Shockwave. I can fuse on my turn. So all I need is keep the Arcanic Shockwave, keep the Lightning card, and I deal the last point of damage with the Arcane damage to my opponent. I only defend with 1 card. My opponent flips Lightning Press from Arsenal and kills me, just as I'm about to kill him. So it was like a bit of a feels bad, right? I feel like I punted that one a little bit after my opponent. He played very well and put me in that situation, but then I feel like I kind of blew it a little bit. What ends up happening is I end up in 6th, and I actually think I end up in the best spot I could for the top 8. I end up getting paired into Katsu for the quarterfinals, which I think is like very favored to Viserai and is a matchup I'm more than happy to play against. Kind of goes as it does in testing. It tends to be that Katsu can put some pressure on, but you can they can't defend you very well. So as soon as you set up like even sort of a small 12-14 sort of Rune Chant, Skalata, Sonata turn, you kind of take the game away from there, which is what ends up happening. And then semifinals, I play against Harry, who's a player from Melbourne, who's is a good player, playing Mount Heroic Briar. And to be honest, I get quite lucky in this matchup. So he's the 7th seed, I'm the 6th seed, so I get to choose to go first. Start my turn, I go Mordred Tide into Become the Arknight, making 2 Rune Chants, getting a Read the Runes and making 6 more, and ending up on my first turn with 8 Rune Chants. And so I think the game ends up ending on turn 4. I just make some more Rune Chants and then just combo him off and then kill him the following turn after that. So just goes really well for me, to be honest.
Jeez. The final. This is something that we all watched live. I have some follow-up questions on it, but a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people are telling you that it looked easy, but you're kind of, in your opinion, it wasn't, right? In your experience, per se.
Yeah, so I'm playing as Old Time in the final, which I know about. I'm sitting around a lot on the top 8. My matches take about 15 minutes, but there's 2 Old Time versus Briar matchups, which are going to fatigue. So I'm sitting around for a good, combined about 2 hours, I think, between my quarterfinal and then my semifinal, and then my semifinal and the final is about an hour each, just waiting for the matches to finish. So I have a lot of thinking time about the matchup. And so I know I'm going to be playing against probably either Briar or Old Time, and at this point, it looks like Old Time just based on how that matchup goes. And traditionally, Old Time is kind of like you want to OTK combo them. They'll come in and put a lot of pressure, try and put as much pressure on you as they can, but they tend to not be able to put on much pressure outside of maybe like E-Strikes and Art of Wars. It's very hard for them to go wide. Maybe Pummel plus CNCs, or if they're able to find Oakenold Fuse turns. That's kind of the pressure they have. And to be honest, you can just defend with the hands that you need to. You can use your life total as a resource to build your sort of 1-turn kill combo turn. Just build up Rune Chants, and then eventually you just combo them off. That's the plan, right? That's the kind of planning against Old Time. And this is, I think, really good. And if people have seen the final, then because this conversation is going to be more for people who have seen the final. If you haven't, you can go and watch it on YouTube at Fluke and Box. But effectively, what happens is a really weird final plays out from a spectator standpoint, which is where Roy, who is my finals opponent, decides to not attack me in the game. which looks really odd. Like, why is he not putting pressure on the Viceroy player? Well, if Roy attacks me, what ends up happening is that I get to defend with some cards in my hand. I get to filter out the attack actions from my hand by defending with them, and then playing my non-attack actions to make a rune chance, drawing up my next hand, doing the same thing. So my deck is about 50% attack actions and non-attack actions, and as the turn plays out, each turn plays out, the turn cycles play out, I get to make a rune chance and defend with attack actions, keeping my deck at about a 50-50 ratio. And then eventually I get to a combo turn and can go off and kill him, especially if he's only at 40 life, right? Roy has a different plan for this matchup. He knows his deck is really defensive. He doesn't play Art of Wars. He doesn't have a very strong aggressive plan. So instead, Roy has this plan that he's come up with, which is he has 3 Tome of Fiendal in his deck, and he's just going to use his Crown of Seeds to cycle and at the same time stack his deck. He's going to be stacking his deck so that when he gets back through to that stack, he's going to have set up, Fused Oakenolds, CNCs with pummels, things like this. And he's not going to allow me to filter my hand. He's not going to attack into me, and he's just going to filter until he finds the Tome of Fiendals, and he's just going to gain a bunch of life up to close to 60 life. And that's going to make my job as the Viceroy player trying to combo him on one turn really, really difficult. And what can actually happen in that matchup with that plan is I can just run out of ways to make rune chance, or my hand gets clogged with all attack actions because he's not letting me filter my attack actions by defending, and I can't do anything. I literally can't do anything other than having to attack, losing all my rune chance, Roy being able to defend out pretty efficiently. I'm back at square one and probably don't have enough proper damage left in my deck to actually kill him. So the plan, if you've seen the matchup, looks really, really weird. Looks like it doesn't make any sense, but is actually really smart from Roy. And had I not known about that plan, I think I'd probably lose that matchup, to be honest. Fortunately, I know about the plan, and for the first 5 turns of the game, if you watch, I just dump my hand into Grasp of the Arknight and just make rune chance with the Grasp of the Arknight. I don't actually play a card for the first 5 turns.
So this is kind of a natural follow-up question I think a lot of people have. It's like, let's picture the scenario. You have all attack actions in your hand. The old him doesn't want to attack you because that will allow you to filter your hand. You know that if you attack, you will lose the game. There's no way you can win the game. So you both just kind of pass and nobody does anything, right? The old him wins because he has more life, right?
No, so it's an untimed matchup. So players do need to make plays. So because the old-time player is progressing the game, they're ticking up their tunic each turn, they're using Crown of Seeds, they're filtering their hand, they're making actions. If I get to a point where I have all attack actions in my hand and I'm doing nothing other than just passing the turn back, because I can't do anything. I've got too many rune chants to dump into Grasp of the Arknight. The only thing I can choose to do is attack, pop my rune chants, and come in. At some point, very likely, and this is a kind of a bit of a weird area in the rules, but if I'm not progressing the game state, at some point the judge can say, I need to progress the game state. So I could be on my onus to actually progress the game state because the ultimate player is. They are stacking their deck, they're doing this. But what would have actually ended up happening is eventually Roy would have played all 3 tomes. If say I did have 4 attacks in my hand and my arsenal, I ended up putting an attack in there because I had to, or I put a reduced to rune chant or whatever because I didn't know about the plan. Eventually, if I just decided to do nothing and pass, Roy would gain up to 60 life, and then he would just have a stacked deck, and then he would just come in every turn with pressure, with CNC's pummels, with Fused Oakenolds, with just put me under so much pressure that I wouldn't be able to make rune chance, and maybe I scrape being able to get to enough to go off. But at that point, he's on 60 life, and if you saw the game, I wasn't able to OTK him. It took me a second turn to kill him. And when I Sonata in that game, I end up 18 cards as my Sonata, and I get 5 cards off of it. And it looks really unlucky. But in actual fact, it's not that unlucky because I have a ton of attacks in my deck and not many non-attacks because I've been playing them all. So it's about right. So that would be what ends up happening, is that I probably just fail to deal enough damage, and then Roy just kills me with all of his big attacks and stuff eventually.
For sure. So why no Reaping Blade?
Yeah. So it's an interesting game. It looks, I think with context, it's a really interesting game from a strategy perspective. It just, I think it looks a bit odd, but full credit to Roy for playing. Why no Reaping Blade? We didn't really have space for it, to be honest. In testing, we didn't really want to play it. The only matchup we wanted to play it into was Old Time and maybe Bolton, but even Bolton, if we don't know that they're on the Sabres combo, we don't want to play Reaping Blade. And we knew that there was more, sort of Oldham was moving a bit towards more aggressive decks, and we saw that with Matt Rogers' deck at New Zealand Nationals, that he's playing this more aggressive build. We knew people might be playing that kind of plan into us and forgoing the life gain because they expect Reaping Blade. So we decided we didn't want to play it. We tested the matchup without Reaping Blade. We felt we could win it. We were aware of the strategy, like of this kind of don't attack and just gain life. And we felt that we could still beat it as long as we were set up for it and sideboarded for it. And Rosetta Thorn is just so important in some matchups. The card's so good, and it freed up a space in the deck list for us.
Mm. What did you think about the skill level and performance of the Australian field?
Yeah, played against a lot of good opponents. I don't think I had many, if any, easy games, which is crazy. I think. Not that I expected to have easy games or anything, but I just think that a lot of my games were tighter. People played to their outs and played to their lines a lot more than I've experienced in the past. People were more familiar than maybe I would have thought with what my deck was trying to do, to the point where I had three opponents actually over the course of the event playing Briar, who had Chains of Eminence and were like playing it to name Read the Runes so that I couldn't stack Read the Runes and get on an OTK plan. So like there were people who had a plan for the matchup, whether right or wrong with that plan with the Chains of Eminence, whether that's good, a thing that works well or not. They had plans and they had tested this matchup. So yeah, I mean, and just the performance in Limited, people's procedural gameplay was quite solid. So yeah, definitely no free wins to be had, and you know what, there's some really good players here in Australia, that's for sure.
Sure. Put out a Twitter post asking for questions from the audience. I got one that's people have been insisting. This one particularly came out a lot. I think this is from Billy. So Billy asks, everybody's burning question. He literally writes that and he says, is North America confirmed a harder region than Australia now? I think this is in the context of you being the champion, but then when you got over to America, couldn't really make it. These are his words, not mine.
Well, when I headed over to Orlando, I wasn't expecting it. I just went with 10 days. It's not like I prepared for the event for a long time and then didn't make day 2 or anything. So, Billy, you know what? But Billy, there's some really good players in Australia. In all seriousness, there's some really good players in Australia, and there's some really good players in North America. And I'm excited to get through this ProQuest season and see what happens at the first Pro Tour when we have a number of players headed to the first Pro Tour from Australia. I'm almost certain of it. We're going to have a number of players in North America, and I don't think Australia is going to disappoint. That's for sure. I think there's some really good players, and I've had the same experience in the US at the calling. I played against a number of very, very skilled opponents who hadn't even been playing the game that long, so who knows how good they'll be in another 6 months' time.
Well, you heard it here, Billy. Hayden has confirmed that is indeed correct. So let's talk about the future. The national champion. What's next?
I guess the Pro Tour. The first Pro Tour is on the horizon. I think we're going to get an announcement in just a few days, actually. I think the 1st or the 2nd February, we get an announcement on the very first Pro Tour. So, yeah, that's definitely on the horizon. World Championship at the end of the year. Just to continue to play Flesh and Blood, I think. It definitely felt great to achieve the national championship and to win the trophy and hold that aloft. But it doesn't feel like I'm kind of done. It feels like I definitely want to continue to compete, and I have this like bug now for competitive Flesh and Blood. I think that's not going away anytime soon. ProQuest season starts in a couple of weeks. I'm definitely going to be getting to a few ProQuests. It would be nice to have a dedicated invite for that first Pro Tour and maybe save these 2 PTIs I now have as a bit of a crutch. So, and then also just the ability to play these ProQuest season, continue to play within the Australian community. As I said, some fantastic players here. So competition is going to be high. It's going to be just great to be playing these events, playing competitive Flesh and Blood. And then hopefully some callings. I'm sure we'll get some calling announcements over my side of the world, but I'm sure I'll be over in Europe or North America for at least a little bit of the year to play in a couple of events around the Pro Tour. So yeah, I think just waiting to see the announcements that we get as we go through the next few weeks and make some decisions from there. But basically just play more Flesh and Blood and keep doing what we're doing.
So sounds like you are not totally satisfied yet after your win. What do you attribute your success to? Specifically, your continued reign and not just becoming a has-been or washed up, like as the kids would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to be able to win something and feel like I'm still okay at the game, still reasonable.
Must be nice.
preparation, honestly. Like I think just preparing for this event. As I said, going into all of my constructed matchups, I felt like I knew exactly what I needed to do in that game. When things didn't go quite right for me, I knew how I needed to come back into the game, was able to play to my outs. I think the draft preparation felt good. Ultimately, I think I underperformed in draft, but the preparation was there. I think I went 3-3 in the end. But the preparation was there, and maybe I would have, without the preparation, I lose more games of draft, not just the ones that I did end up losing. So yeah, I can't go past the preparation. Really, prep was really important.
How does it feel? National champion Hayden Dale. You did it. You stuck your head in the ground, put your nose to the grindstone, and literally achieved the exact thing that you kind of set out to do.
Yeah, good way to cap off the kind of 2021. I guess it's in 2022, but the 2021 season. And just to, honestly, one of the best things was sharing that moment with my friends from my local community around me, my local store, RC Crew Games, and my friends that were there playing in the event as well. And I got to play a friend in the finals. I got to play Roy in the finals, which was just an awesome thing to have as well. So yeah, definitely feels really good, and definitely riding that high this week for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so final question here, another listener question. Unfortunately, this one does want to remain anonymous, but they ask, what is your secret to winning on stream?
Oh, is this from Patrick Brendan?
Not seeing that on my end, but
do you know what?
The answer, sir?
I think I went 2-2 on stream. Did I? I don't know. I definitely lost at least. I lost 2 games I lost 2 games to Matt. Shout out to Matt Clark on the stream. And I think I won 2 games, 1 game of draft and then the finals game. So I don't know. I know how to go 50-50. That's about it, Brendan. So you have to tell this anonymous person. They're going to have to ask someone else.
Yeah, still 50-50 is a little bit better than 03 from what I've heard. Anyway, that was our interview of the new national champion of Australia, Hayden Dale, stand-up man himself. I'm really happy. I think it was awesome that, a lot of things changed, like your priorities were set, there was a specific goal, and that was achieved. And I think that for all of us that tested with you, or part of that multi-month process, there's some sort of vicarious gratification. And I think that, you won for us. It feels good. So I'm happy that it was done, and I wish you the most success in the future.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to say is just a big thank you to you, Brendan, as well. You're a big part of me continuing to play Flesh and Blood, and of course to Arsenal Pass, to our community, to our listeners, to our viewers. The reason that I continue to commit to Flesh and Blood and play competitively, it's not just now for me. I think it's a big part of the reason I do it is for the love of what we do as well at Arsenal Pass. So yeah, just wanted to give a big shout out to, first of all, you, Brendan, definitely, and also to our community. Thank you for all the kind words as well from everyone as well. It's been too kind, but thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a bit hot in my room. I think I'm sweating out of my eyes right now, which is really unusual. But I want to plug the Arsenal Pass YouTube channel. Like I said, we do have some really cool content that went up there. You got Farewell Welcome to Rate this weekend. Check out the videos that Hayden did. They will help you crush your local scene. I know I'm going to be watching them, or I'm just going to force Yellow Bellow. We'll see. And obviously, he did the Viscerai deck tech for the deck that he took to Nationals, and he won with. I think that this deck is something that should be on your radar, especially going into the next format. We have some pretty significant bannings that have happened in erratas, and Viscerai, this deck in particular, wasn't really touched by it. And I think it has some of the strongest pieces of utility in the game, including its boots and just its modular game plan, being able to kind of adapt to anything that's across the board. So I think it can really only get better unless something else gets much, much better. So check it out. It's an awesome video. And again, congratulations, Hayden. Till next time, see you in the next episode.
See you later.